Life Management Science Labs would like to acknowledge that we live and produce this podcast on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people. We'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands of our listeners and our international colleagues. We'd like to pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. Hello everyone, and welcome to Work in Progress, the Personal Productivity Science Insights podcast produced by LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. We are champions of life management science, providing structured insights informed by science and inspired by practice on key aspects of conscious living. Each week, we bring you scientific and practical insights on each element with the expert knowledge of professionals in the field. I am your host, Joanna. Let's get started. Welcome back, everyone. I'm your host, Joanna, and today on Work in Progress, we are going to be talking about emotional stability and how our emotional stability affects our happiness and performance. So I'm very excited to talk about this topic, and joining me is Maria Jeffers. So Maria is a mental fitness coach, empowering overthinkers to take action and make progress. Hi, Maria. It's so lovely to have you here with us.
Hi, Joanna. Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, of course. Before we dive into this, would you love to tell us a bit more about who you are and what it is you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. I'm a mental fitness coach, as you said. I really enjoy empowering people to move away from overthinking, to get out of their heads and actually back into the moment and be present. So it's really powerful to be able to help people make progress with their goals and also to live a happier, more joyful life.
Yeah, for sure. And how did you find yourself in this line of work?
Yeah, this really came about. It was during COVID. I wasn't working at the time. I'm a mum of three. So I've got three children that I was really focusing on. And COVID came along. It stopped the world. I think it just gave me a chance to reflect on, well, actually, what is it that I want to do now? And this virtual space opened up where suddenly I was able to draw upon my background in occupational psychology and, work again. And it just sort of opened up a doorway for me, really.
Yeah, and that sounds really interesting as well. And I feel like COVID has really opened up, like you said, a pathway for people to work online, and it's really like increased the reach that we can have in the world as well. What's your favorite part about, virtual work?
I think my favourite part is this, in a sense that it's international. I'm here in the UK and I'm speaking to you, and it's amazing because I coach clients all over the world. So I think it's that international component and really feeling the connectedness with people, regardless of the country they're in.
Yeah, that sounds really cool as well. I feel like getting to work with people all over the world is just so great because you get to hear so many different perspectives and everyone's got such a different outlook on life. So it's really interesting. Awesome. Well, I would love to get to know you a bit more with a section we have called Have You Met Maria? So here I'm just going to say a few key words and you can just say the first thing that comes to your mind, whether that be a favorite you have or anything recent to do with the topic. So the first one here is books.
Yeah, well, I read quite a bit at the moment. I've been reading a lot. I'd say Brené Brown, Daring Greatly, which is very much about vulnerability and really transforming our lives through being able to show our vulnerability and how it connects us.
Yeah. Do you often read a lot of nonfiction or fiction books?
I really do tend to enjoy non-fiction, really, where I'm learning. I'm just enjoying being on this journey of growth and learning for myself. So yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, my next one for you is movies.
Yeah, movies. Anything with Tom Hanks in, because I just think he's a fabulous actor. So I would say something like Castaway or Forrest Gump. I know I'm going back a few years now, but they're real feel-good films where the main characters show real resilience and positivity. And I just love films like that.
Yeah, I feel like the classics are always really good choices. Perfect. Next one, famous role model or even just anyone in your life that you find inspirational.
Um, Famous role model. again, I think I'd go back to an actor like Tom Hanks, knowing his background as a child. It sounds as though he had, quite a difficult start, and he's just been so successful in his career and comes across so authentically. Whenever I've seen him interviewed, he just seems like a lovely, lovely person. So I
Yeah.
think he would be my role model, and always was when I was younger.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. Do you have anyone in your life that you look up to? A
Oh,
family,
absolutely.
friends?
Yeah. Do you know what?
Yeah.
I learn so much from those around me all the time. And I actually look up to my kids. I learn so much
Oh,
from my own children. My eldest is 15, my youngest is 7, and then there's one in the middle, Jess, who's 12. And
yeah.
I learn so much from them. Children are so pure, aren't they, in their essence? So it's amazing
Yeah.
to learn things from them.
Yeah, I think that's so lovely when I hear people say that they look up to people who are younger to them as well. I
I
feel like
know.
it doesn't always have to be someone who's older than you. There's always something to learn.
I know. I think the thing with children is they reconnect you back to your fun self, to play.
Mm.
Just sometimes just playing for the sake of it, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's really special.
Yeah, it can be really refreshing at times as well. Like when you get older, lots of responsibilities, and you think that you can't have as much fun anymore, but that's not true.
No, it's not. Yeah, it's good
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah, amazing. Well, my last one for you is there a course that you have completed that has been really influential to you?
Yeah, do you know there's a few courses that I've completed, professionally and personally, and actually one course was on fear, and it was fear to do with horse riding, um, and when I think about it, it was this program that I did online, so virtually as a group, and it really unlocked something within me that made me realize how at the time my fear was quite deep rooted, and that it wasn't actually about just the horse riding. I'd become quite scared of being judged, of how I should be. There's just a lot of internal fear sitting there. So that was a really powerful program that I went on at a pivotal time in my life.
Yeah. And in terms of like virtual programs, I'm really curious because I feel like sometimes people are hesitant because they're like, oh, it's online, we might not get the full effect. Can you tell me about your experience with the virtual program?
Oh, absolutely. I would have thought the same. I would have thought you need to be in person. You need to build relationships with people. You need to be with them. Well, I have met some fabulous people online, people that I haven't yet met in person, but I feel like I know them really well. So
Yeah.
yeah, my actual coaching accreditation. I've met a very good friend who we are going to meet up in the new year in person, but it'll be the first
Oh,
time in about 3 years. It will be the first time ever, but we feel like we really know each other. So it is possible on virtual courses to really feel the impact of what's being delivered and build relationships as well.
yeah. Wow. Well, that's really wonderful. And that sounds really great. I feel like
Yeah.
you've inspired me a little to do
Yeah.
like a little online course.
Yeah, try it.
Yeah, for sure. Amazing. Well, I think we can jump right into our interview questions now. And this is a topic that I'm really excited to talk about because I feel like in your day to day, you don't really get to talk about emotional stability. And I feel like it's such a common thing that people go through or people have experienced, this emotional instability. So I'd love to ask you how you would define the concept of emotional stability.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm also passionate about this topic because it is so fascinating. And as you say, it's
Yeah.
not maybe often talked about. Well, emotional
Yeah.
stability it's a personality trait that we all have. So at the other end of emotional stability is neuroticism. So it's being neurotic. It's actually being on edge. It's being anxious, possibly easily angered, feeling sad. So emotional stability is the opposite of that on a continuum. And most of us fall somewhere in the middle when it comes to emotional stability. However, we're not fixed, it's not set in stone. And I used to believe our personality was pretty much fixed. We are who we were. We were born genetically with a certain personality, and our environment also shaped it. So I used to think in adulthood that was our personality. If we were more emotionally unstable, that's the way we were. Well, actually, our brains are plastic. So due to neuroplasticity, we are able to change and mold the way that we think and how we feel and experience our emotions and how we frame those emotions for ourselves. So it's a really interesting topic. When you think of emotional stability, and if you're going through a period of feeling quite stressed, quite anxious, and you're feeling unstable as if you're attaching your emotions to external things, then you are going to feel the ups and downs of life. But there is another way that we can train ourselves to think and to be that we can be in control of our stability more. It is something that we can decide to work on and develop.
Yeah. And what's that like other thing that we can do? For example, if we are going through a period in our lives where we're feeling stressed and anxious and it's very up and down, what can we do about that?
Yeah, there's lots of different things that we can do. The first thing is to be self-aware enough to realize what we're experiencing. Because I think often when we experience periods of stress, it very much comes down to, well, this thing is happening. Something out there is happening, this situation or this relationship, this person. And we tend to blame, or not even blame, but we tend to attribute how we are feeling to this external thing. And through building our self-awareness, what we can do is take back accountability and responsibility for how we feel. We do get to choose how we feel. And I know that might not sound, for some people, they might think, well, no, I'm going through a stressful time and that's just it. Well, we do have more control than we think. We do have control over our thoughts, our behaviors, and to some extent, our emotions as well.
Yeah. And how does maintaining emotional stability help contribute to our individual productivity?
Yeah, well, if someone who is more emotionally stable, they are likely to behave in a calmer way. They're more likely to respond to events and setbacks rather than react. So, in terms of being productive, someone who's more emotionally stable is more likely to be able to focus, is more likely to have better relationships, say within a working environment, is more likely just able to see the positive in a situation rather than jump to, or what could go wrong, or this is a problem. People who are more emotionally stable, they're able to use different perspectives, take a look at something from a different angle. Those people who feel as if their emotions fluctuate quite easily can quite quickly see something as a major problem, as if, this has all gone wrong, catastrophize things. So that is something that through my own experience, I used to feel that way. I used to feel a lot less emotionally stable when I was younger. And I wasn't self-aware enough to realize that I had control over this, that it was coming from me. It wasn't coming from out there. So my productivity could feel a little chaotic. It could be up and down depending on how I felt. And then it's a vicious circle. It's vice versa. It's if setbacks and challenges happen, my emotions would suffer for that. And then my productivity would. So it does become a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like that's really interesting how it's kind of like this chain reaction almost. Like this thing happens and then it affects your emotions and it affects how you like act and how productive you can be. And also, I guess, your relationships with other people, like you said before, if you're attaching externally.
Yes, definitely. We do have a tendency as humans to look outward and think that it's what's going on out there that's impacting our emotions. And to some degree, that can be true. But when we realize that we have more power than we think, we can take back a level of control. There's so many things out there we just cannot control. We can't control what goes on out in the wider world. We actually can't control anything else other than ourselves. And when that really lands with us and we really realize that, that's powerful. And that is self-awareness. And that's when you can start to think for yourself, well, actually, how do I want to feel? Do I want to feel calmer? Do I want to feel clearer headed? Do I want to have all these thoughts that rush in and I have to act upon them? Or do I want something different? What's the opposite look like? How do I gain calmness and more stillness? Or how do I feel my emotions without them causing me to react to them? How do I just feel and accept rather than having to act upon them? So that, it's,
Yeah.
yeah,
No, I feel like, sorry, that's so interesting. Like that idea of like thoughts coming in or emotions being felt, and you feel like you have to react to them. And I'm really curious because do you think this is like a form of validation or seeking validation and justification?
yeah. Do you mean in terms of, fr- in terms of how we then behave, that we're sort of validating our emotions through our behavior?
Yeah, by like through reacting to these emotions or these thoughts, that is a form of validation that we feel like by reacting, like we have to, validate ourselves in some way.
Yeah, that's true. Yes, I suppose it is. I mean, there's other behaviours that I see that are numbing emotions. So a lot of us stay very busy to numb emotions. Some people over exercise, some people maybe drink every evening, drink alcohol. And it's a way, in a sense, of we don't want to experience our emotions. So we numb them through doing. We do something that takes that away. And it's a lovely thing to actually be comfortable with yourself. And that's where the mental fitness training, when I work with people, it's actually at the essence of it, getting people to be comfortable in their own skin. It's okay to feel your emotions. It's not about pretending that everything feels positive. Some days it won't, but it's okay to accept that, and that it's not you. It's just a moment in time. It's a thought, it's an emotion, but let's not attach our self-worth to that, because tomorrow is a new day and we can wake up and feel differently. So it's just enabling ourselves to sit with our own emotions rather than always trying to either avoid them through numbing them, or, as you say, validating our emotions by maybe acting out certain behaviours that, just again, it takes it round in a vicious circle.
Yeah, and how can we help, mitigate ourselves from having to react to these emotions or react to these thoughts and feeling like when we have a thought come in, we have to do something about it?
Yeah, yeah. Well, the way I work with people, again, it's first of all just to have a basic understanding of what our brain is doing on a day-to-day basis. We are humans that our brains are trying to keep us safe and have us survive, just like in the animal world. At the heart of ourselves is survival. So the primitive brain is constantly looking for threats, danger, negative things. So just like by simply understanding that our brain every day is looking for negative things to keep us safe, helps us to understand that, look, I'm not I'm not being negative. I'm not a negative person. It's just my brain's doing its job. It's trying to keep me safe. But once I realize that, I am then free to top up my brain with some positive input. So whether that is some positive self-talk, where I fill up my cup by telling myself that I can do this, I am capable, I am good enough, or whether it's journaling every morning for a few minutes or in the evening and showing gratitude for what I have, the relationships I have, just expressing the positive aspects of our life in an amplified way. So every day we're reminding ourselves consciously of what we've got going on in our lives that's positive. And it could be as simple as you're sitting there with your morning cup of tea or coffee and you're appreciating that moment. And it is just recognizing that. And that levels up the brain then. The brain sort of, oh, okay, we've got some positivity going on now, rather than just primed to look for the negatives.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like that's so true. We're so constantly searching for the negatives and we want to feel like everything negative is true because our brain is telling us that it is. So it's about, I guess, fighting against that by trying to search for the positives.
Yeah, and I'd say, and it's funny, rather than fighting against it, it's almost just accepting it. It's okay. It's okay. My brain is doing its job. It's trying to keep me safe.
Yeah.
But look, thank you. I don't need that. It's almost just an acceptance that that's what the primitive brain does, in a sense. And then making that conscious choice that you want to input some positive thoughts. Another part of mental fitness coaching is to do with helping people take short moments of their day where they just close their eyes and just focus on one of their senses for a few minutes. So that could be sound. We could just be thinking about, okay, we're not even thinking, not thinking, hearing, just listening to distant sounds. It could be a sensation of you sitting in the chair. You can feel your body in the chair. You can feel your feet on the floor, and you're actually allowing your thoughts to pass through. So you're not thinking about it. You're just experiencing it. And this is a really good way to bring us back into our bodies. And as I say, I help people who have a tendency to overthink. I know that can cover most of us. We all have periods of time in our life where we do overthink, but it just allows our brain that little bit of space to be able to be in the body rather than in the head. And then you find after you've sat for a few minutes in that way, when you open your eyes again, you just feel a little bit like you've reset yourself. You've quietened down that primitive part of the brain, and you've reset things for yourself.
Yeah, and I love how you brought up this concept of overthinking as well. And I'd love to ask you how you think it impedes upon our ability to be productive and be emotionally stable.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it, how our emotions, they really do impact so many different areas. And I would say in terms of being productive, when I get into overthinking, and lots of clients that I've worked with who think, it actually stops action. So we end up procrastinating on things that we know we need to do, but because we're thinking, worrying, what if, we're coming up with maybe scenarios, or we're trying to avoid it in a sense. We know something's coming up we need to prepare for. We're sort of avoiding it. So it really does make us procrastinate. If our emotional stability and our overthinking is in overdrive, we can end up doing that. Or we can overcommit to things. We can end up taking on too much because we have all these different thoughts rushing in. I need to do that. I must do that. And we end up overcommitting. And then we are not as focused, in actually producing the results that we need to and want to.
Yeah, and what should we do, for example, if our overthinking is in overdrive?
It is about this practice, really getting involved in helping our brain recognize the positives in our day. So the journaling, the positive affirmations, any positive self-talk. It can just literally be, come on, you're doing a good job, Maria. Keep going. It's some positive self-talk without it having to be a written down, anything that's written down or recited in a mirror. It is just talking to yourself as you would a friend or a child or someone that you're really encouraging, where you'd say, come on, it's okay. It's not that bad. Let's keep going. And it's encouraging self-talk. And the other thing really is, if every day we can get in the habit of just tuning into one of our senses and getting away from our thoughts, that really builds this mental muscle. So it builds our brain, and it enables it to create more positive pathways. So we will have certain thought patterns that have been, if you picture it in a woods and you've got certain paths that have been walked upon a lot and there's clear paths through, well, that's what our brains are like with our thought patterns. And for a lot of us, there's some real negative paths that are going through, and we can change that. Yeah, we can change that with positive ones.
Yeah, and for someone who is listening to this and they're like, wow, I really relate to all this overthinking and constantly having all these thoughts and just following that negative pathway, what's one or two first steps you would recommend for them to help move away from that?
Yeah, I'd really recommend becoming more self-aware, having a think about and a reflect on, when do you tend to overthink? At what point in your day? Is it more in the morning time? Is it more in the evening? Do you worry about things before you go into bed? I used to be the sort of person, if I had something on the next day, I couldn't get to sleep because my brain was in overdrive, thinking about, but worrying really what I had on, getting anxious about things, worrying about events coming up. Now, if I have something important on the next day, when I'm in bed, that is it. I'm in bed, and I just feel myself lying there, and I'm just in that moment. I don't allow myself to think. It's almost like thinking's a no. We're not going to do that. We'll have a think tomorrow. We are where we are, and it's about being present. So it is really focusing on where I am in the present. We can't be anxious when we're totally present. So when we do these short meditations and really connect back with our body, we are in the present moment. When you're listening to those distant sounds with your eyes closed and really focused on that, you're in the present moment. There's no room for being anxious in the present moment. It's only when we worry about future events, or we reflect and overthink past events and we start worrying about them. But if people, can really have a think about how they can incorporate some short, eyes closed time in the day. It can just be at your desk. It can be as you go home in the morning, a couple of minutes, just focus on one sense. It will ground you and make you more present.
Yeah, amazing. And how does this then impact our happiness when we're able to work towards, a stage of being more emotionally stable?
Yeah. Well, what I've found is I used to think, again, happiness, you attach it to things like achievement, don't we? Oh, I'll be really happy when I get that new job, or, oh, I'm getting a promotion, I'll be really happy, or I'm getting a new car, or I'm buying a house. They're like events that make us happy. Well, actually, that's usually short-lived, because whatever it is we achieve, we are happy about it. That's why we do express our happiness, and that's brilliant. But it's normally short-lived and we go back to our normal. So whatever
Yeah.
that normal of happiness level is, we tend to go back to that. Now, something that I've realized is the more emotionally stable I've become, so the more I've worked on becoming emotionally stable, the happier I've felt. So it doesn't actually matter what's happening in my day so much now. I am making a conscious choice to feel gratitude and positivity and therefore experience being happy. It's almost like I'm choosing to feel happy. And I don't mean I'm running around like, totally excited, happy every day. However, I am making a choice to see the positive in things, even when things go really wrong. And, I make mistakes. I have that moment of beating myself up for it, but quite quickly now I recover. And in the past, it was that recovery was very difficult. And I've coached clients like this as well. It's when we really dwell on a mistake and we keep our hand on the hot stove, so to speak, and feel the pain and relive the pain and think about it again and relive it again. We really do punish ourselves for our own mistakes. Now, the thing that emotional stability allows you to do is to accept that you're human and you're going to make mistakes, and that's okay. And if you're making a mistake, you're growing and learning. What can we learn from that? Failing is not an end. It's just a stage. It means we're progressing, we're learning something new. So I love the thought now that it's great to fail. It's great to fail at things because it means we are pushing out of our comfort zone.
Yeah, and I loved how you mentioned this idea of, reliving the pain, like we let ourselves continue to relive the pain. I would actually love to start with asking like why we do that. Like why do we let ourselves sit with that? Even though it's happened in the past, why do we continue to let ourselves relive it?
Again, it's coming from that primitive side of the brain that wants to, it sounds ironic, it wants to keep us safe. So it's really beating us up for this to make sure we don't do something like this again because,
Yeah.
I'm really going to judge you heavily that you got that wrong and that was awful. So it's scaring us. So we respond out of fear. So we think, oh, I won't do that again. I'm not going to make that mistake again. And you can see how people end up making themselves small because let's say you try it something for the first time. I don't know, Joanna, the first time you did a podcast, for example, I am sure, you felt more nervous. You maybe made a couple of mistakes. Now, can you imagine
Yeah.
someone who said, oh, I'm not doing that again. That was just awful. That was too stressful. I'm not doing it again. When you wouldn't be where you are now, really enjoying the process and you found your flow with it now. And it's like anything we do for the first few times, inevitably, it's not, we're going to make some mistakes because we're learning something new. So it's just embracing that and allowing ourselves to. But that primitive side of the brain wants to beat us up for our mistakes because it wants us to, don't try that again. Don't you go doing that again. See how wrong it went. So it's, once again, self-awareness allows us to appreciate that is going on and it's not really us. It's our thoughts are separate. We don't need to attach ourselves to our thoughts.
Yeah, for sure. And what are some other common pitfalls that people might fall into? So we've talked about reliving the pain. Are there any other ones?
Um, so with productivity or with happiness, would you say, Joanna, just in
Um,
general?
yeah, let's go
Yeah,
with productivity. Yeah.
yeah. Okay, so sometimes strengths get overplayed. So our primitive part of the brain will have us achieve things and then it's never good enough. It's never quite good enough. So we need to achieve more. So to the outside world, these types of people, they are high achievers, which is fabulous, but they're not always enjoying the experience because in their brain is constantly at them, telling them they must do more, they must work harder. It's not good enough. It's not perfect. So again, these thoughts are actually, they are making for a productive person, but that person's going to burn out. That person can't keep going in that way. So that's where productivity either absolutely just stops or slowly starts to decline, because people are not able to sustain that level of productivity with those sorts of thoughts coming in. So being
Yeah.
more emotionally stable allows you to enjoy the process more. And that's where people can then be productive, and actually it's sustainable. They can be productive for a longer time.
Yeah, and we've talked about a few strategies here now. And would you recommend that people approach a coach to help deal with these, or try deal with it themselves first?
I would say most people I've worked with have dipped into some self-help books first and personal development. So, there's a bit of an interest there, and there's the recognition that I want to change something. It's that feeling I had myself years ago where I thought, do you know what? I don't want to feel like this. I want to break through this fear. There's things I want to do that I feel like I'm stopping myself from doing. So it is initially, I would say, reach out to someone, reach out to a coach that can help you become more self-aware and see the things you can't see, because we all have our blind spots, and we can't always recognize certain patterns that we have because it's just our norm. So it's really powerful working with another person who is trained to really spot patterns, certain things that you'd say that you won't recognize.
Yeah. Yeah, perfect. Yeah, I feel like we often go to like those self-help books first, and sometimes they can be helpful, but I
Definitely.
feel like, yeah, exactly. But sometimes we don't have that self-awareness to notice our own blind spots, because how can we if we don't actually know what we're looking for?
That's right.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, and I always
awesome.
think books are fabulous and they're so inspiring, but until you
Yeah.
actually start to do something, knowing is different, isn't it? We can have all the knowledge in the world. Like, I've read books. Uh, well, I laugh actually. Sometimes one of my relatives, she's got loads of books on yoga, and you would think by looking at a bookshelf you were going to meet a yoga expert, but she doesn't really practice much yoga. She's quite interested in it, and in her head, sort of likes the idea of it, but doesn't actually do it. So I would say what
Yeah.
a coach does, a coach helps you make progress with the things you want to do, as opposed to just have some knowledge and not do anything with it.
Yeah, exactly. So being able to just take that extra step forward
Yeah,
is
yeah,
what you can gain from that.
yeah,
Awesome.
absolutely.
Perfect. Well, I'd love to jump into this idea of goal setting and how maybe emotional intelligence can help us improve our goal setting skills.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, first of all, for someone who is more emotionally stable, they are more likely to set goals in the first place. A lot of people avoid setting goals because they either feel they're too intimidating, or, um, yeah, sometimes they set unrealistic goals. So someone who has a clearer mind can probably see the direction that they want to go in and the steps that they need to take. So it's just, again, it's that clear headedness and being able to see and navigate a route, rather than setting harsh goals that are either unachievable, or they just go by the wayside and they don't really do the things required.
Mm. Yeah. And how can we go about, sitting ourselves down to set these goals, especially when we're like fighting with a lot of different thoughts or a lot of different emotions, and we perhaps haven't gotten to that position where we can say we are emotionally stable?
Yeah, I'd say a good starting point is establishing a few habits and routines that you think can move you a little bit closer to whatever your goal is. So as I say, it might be something as simple as taking a few minutes in the morning to journal and write intentionally what it is you're going to do that day, that just moves you a tiny bit closer to where you want to go. So,
Yeah.
a goal can start with a bit of a vision. What's the vision you have for yourself? What ideally, how do you want to experience life? Where do you see yourself? What do you enjoy? I suppose it's getting in touch with your values, really. It's really thinking about what are the aspects of life that you enjoy. And then setting goals around that. Obviously, a lot of us get given goals in the workplace. So that's something that they are given to us that we need to work towards. I would say you can still use self development techniques to help you with work related goals. Journaling in the morning, again, write down your intention for the day. How are you going to feel? How are you going to show up? What are you going to do to move 1% closer to the goal that you've set? So it's having that intention.
Yeah, and I often feel like when we talk about things that we can do to help, start goal setting or all this type of stuff, we often think it has to be this really big, like grand sort of strategy that's really complex, but sometimes it's just as simple as journaling, for example.
Yeah, just to make a start. And then what we find is it just builds a little bit of momentum. What we set an intention towards and write down and start to actually do something with, rather than just reading it in a book, we're starting to set something in action, and the seed is planted in our, in our brain, and then behaviors follow our thoughts. So we just tend to go towards that direction more
Yeah.
than if we are, if we are just allowing life to happen to us every day. That's a different experience than if we see life is
Mm.
happening for us or we set a bit of an intention.
Yeah, I actually love that. I've never actually thought about it like that, allowing life to happen or just, yeah, that concept's really interesting. I
It
love
is,
that.
isn't it? I know, I'm exactly the same. That's why I love I love coaching, because I've become aware of all this as well over, the last 5, 6 years. It's really changed my life.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, thank you so much for sharing those strategies with us. I'd love to delve a bit more into those strategies in our practices experiment debrief section. So, here, I'm just going to ask you what you personally might use as a strategy. So, is there a practice that you personally use to improve your understanding of emotional stability or happiness?
Yeah, I think it is really it's the self-awareness. So as I say, yeah, um it's reflecting on, yourself, and how you've lived over your lifetime, really from a child all the way through, and just have a little look at where your emotions have been, peaked and gone lower, and just have a little reflect on that and see if you can find a pattern. It is really helpful to work with someone that can sort of help navigate you through that. But that self awareness is really powerful, because then you have a starting point, and it's making that initial decision of, well, how is it you want to feel, rather than just going on how you've been in the past and labeling yourself as a certain way.
Mm.
It's taking more control and actually thinking, well, how do I want to feel? Do I want to feel more clear headed and calmer? Is that an intention that I want? And really owning that and becoming that. And that is very powerful, because, again, it's about, rather than just not being responsible for ourselves and letting things happen and reacting, we empower ourselves to make the choice. So setting intentions of how you want to be. It's not necessarily what you're doing. It's who you are being. Who is it that you want to be? Is that someone?
Yeah.
Yeah, the calmness is it really does help. A lot of things that we do when we think of being productive and happy, we think a lot of the time of being busy, busy, busy. But actually the stillness, it really is, it recharges us, and it allows us to experience things in a different way.
Yeah, for sure. And do you find like specific times in your day to do this, or is this something that's constantly flowing through your head?
I tend to, first thing in the morning, I like to have that half an hour to myself. I do a few stretches. That helps me as well, because I talk about stillness and meditation, but also there's movement is so good for us, to move and to get outside and use our body. Again, remind our head that we're in a body and that we can move about, and emotions move through the body. So every morning, I'll just literally do 10 minutes of some relaxing stretches, and it just eases my body into the day. And I find that's really helped me emotionally as well.
Mm.
So the stretching, a 5 minutes of journaling. I then do a short meditation. So literally, I'm talking about 2 minutes of listening to something and just allowing myself to tune into that. And you can actually do that before you get up in the morning. Just before you go to get up, you can think, right, I'm just going to lie here for 2 minutes. I'm just going to listen. Just going to listen. Can you hear a car going by? Can you hear a bird? No thoughts, just listen. It's really powerful. It's so simple. We've all got access to do this. But I find, for me, first thing in the morning, and then midday, let's say it's in between a coaching session or a training session. It's just that chance to close my eyes and go inward again, and really just revitalize myself by being present, really getting present. And then I would say end of the day. So sort of 3 touch points throughout your day for a few minutes. But my morning routine is lovely. It's my favorite part of the day now. And I was never a
Yeah.
morning person. I was never a morning person.
Yeah, I feel like most people grow into being morning people because you realize how much you can actually fit into literally just the span of maybe half an hour or an hour earlier in your morning, which is great.
It is, isn't it? It is this, starting the day, jumping up, rushing, all a bit chaotic. You can see how your day can actually end up flowing that way because you've set it up that way. But again, when we
Yeah.
set an intention to have that little half an hour for ourselves, it's really powerful and it impacts productivity and happiness, definitely.
Yeah, I love that. I love how the way you start your day is the way you set up the rest of your day.
Yeah,
I feel like that's
definitely.
really great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, do you find that there are any challenges to doing this practice?
No, do you know, it's just coming naturally to me now. I'm thinking even when I've had family holidays and I've thought to myself, oh, I'm not really going to have the same, you know, ritual. But I think that that's great because you know what? We're changing and evolving all the time. So I just had to think, well, how can I incorporate some of what I do into my morning? You think about you're in a hotel room, you've got your family with you. I'm maybe not going to be sitting there for half an hour doing my journaling and meditation because I'm in suddenly we're in a family room. But I still found the time to get up just 10, 15 minutes earlier, have a little stretch. I didn't do the journaling in the morning, but it was fine. I just allowed myself. I'm on holiday, and this is just a break from routine as well, isn't it? We all need that
Yeah.
sort of break from things. But the fact I was mindful of my own positive self-talk, still kept up with the stretching routines, it was very easy to still do the short meditations while on holiday. No one has to know. You can just be lying there, can't you, in the sunshine? You got your eyes shut. No one knows that I'm sort of in my own little, just tapping into my senses. So
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess the like self-talk that you were kind of just doing just then is sort of what you would look to do when you have those thoughts coming in, being like, oh, even though you're on holiday, why aren't you still doing this, this, and this? You should still be doing that. So not making yourself feel bad for not, doing all these rigid things all the time.
absolutely. And
Yeah.
that's the danger, I think, in this well-being space where we're all trying to help ourselves. But actually, there's a tipping point, isn't there, where
Mm,
we suddenly can we not function without these set strict routines that we must do, and we end up beating ourselves up if we don't do a meditation. And it's not about that
yeah.
at all. It's finding a nice flow with it that suits us. And if there's a day,
Yeah.
we're all going to wake up one morning and maybe not feel very well, I'm not going to get out of bed and start stretching. I'm going to accept that I'm not very well today, and that's it. It's not about beating ourselves up at all, because again, that's allowing the primitive brain to take control with the fear and the you know, I'm looking after you. The primitive brain's always trying to tell you that it's looking after you to keep you safe. So
Yeah.
it's never, if you ever find yourself beating yourself up for something, please do stop and just, recognize how far you've come and how well you're doing.
Yeah, beautiful. I love that. I love how you've mentioned this idea of the primitive brain because I've actually never thought about it that way. I've always wondered why my brain tells me all these negative things and I'm like, "Oh, that's just must be the way it is." But being able to have that self-awareness to acknowledge that your brain is doing this particular thing and it's not doing it to hurt you, but to try and protect you kind of makes you feel better about what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. In our childhood, um, this side of the brain wants us to survive. So that's why it has to protect us with a few lies and stories and these thought patterns because it's trying to keep us safe. It doesn't want us to feel embarrassed or humiliated so it's trying to keep us nice and safe. So
Yeah.
yeah, it is. And once we're aware of that, it's okay. It's okay to have these thoughts. It's normal.
Yeah, amazing. I love normalizing these thoughts, and I feel like it's so important as well. So, thank you so much for sharing that with us. I think we're up to our last little section for today, which is our open mic. And I know you have something pretty exciting to talk about. So, I'll hand it over to you.
Oh,
But yeah, the
thank you.
floor's yours.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, well, the passion that I have where I'm able to put all of this mental fitness into practice is my hobby of horse riding. At the age of 40, so 5 years ago, I took up horse riding again. I used to ride as a child, but I never learned how to jump. I never learned how to show jump when I was a child. And whenever I tried, I used to fall off, or I just didn't, I wasn't any good. I used to say, oh, you're no good at that. So I stopped trying. I just enjoyed the horses and I enjoyed horse riding. And then I went to university, so that just all stopped for 20 years. And then my daughter got into horse riding 5 years ago. And I thought, oh, I quite enjoyed being in that environment again, around the stables, around the animals. So I'm going to learn how to ride again. So I started to learn how to ride. And I thought, I'm going to learn how to show jump. And, I was watching other adults do it and I was thinking it's definitely possible. So I started having lessons, bought my own horse. And now I compete and I show jump and I'm working up the heights slowly. And it is full of ups and downs, but overall it has really built my resilience. It's helped me regulate my emotions because my horse is really sensing how I am feeling. So, in the early days of my horse riding, and I mentioned this course I went on about fear, I went through a period where I would feel very anxious and nervous on the horse, and the horse was just picking up on it. I was making the horse react because it was thinking, what's wrong with you? It could feel the tension in my body. So I was, horses are prey, aren't they? They're primitive. They want to just, fight or flight. They want to run.
Yeah.
So I had to really tackle this. And this fear program that I went on helped me. It just helped me unlock some inner fear that I had about failing, about being judged by other people, about actually just being able to allow myself to try at something and it doesn't have to be perfect. So I was able to just let all this go, just let it go. And now I'm able to learn and actually be in front of loads of people riding, knowing that I'm not a professional horse rider, but it's okay. That's okay. I don't need to be perfect. And the sense of freedom it's given me is amazing. We can all learn. We can learn new skills, as adults.
Yeah. And letting go of this fear, was it more of like an instant thing that happened for you, or was it over time and through the course that you were doing that you eventually came to realize?
It was a process of, as I say, understanding what the brain is doing. So understanding the fear and where it's coming from and this idea of safety, how important was safety to me? My body wants to live. So it was, to be on the horse, my brain is thinking, dangerous, you could fall off. Well, actually, when we start to explore some of these stories, you can fall off. And I have fallen off many times. Have I seriously hurt myself? No. Can you fall over when you're running around playing another sport? Yes. Can you really hurt yourself playing sometimes with the kids in the garden? Yes, I've done that before. So you start to just put it into perspective a little bit. Sometimes what we do with fear, we blow things up out of proportion. Like I say, we catastrophize things as if, falling off my horse means it must be, I'm going to hospital or I've really hurt myself. It actually, you can end up doing that, doing many other things. So I had to reframe a lot of the stories that I was telling myself. The other thing was about reframing the feelings of nervousness. When we feel nervous, actually, they're very similar feelings to being excited. So I had to get back in touch with my inner child in a way and experience excitement again. Because as adults, we don't always experience excitement in that proper tingly way we did as children. We experience that as anxiety and nerves. We often think that we're anxious and on edge. Well, actually, or are we? Or are we just excited because something's about to happen that we care about and we want to do well in? So is there a way of reframing that where it's excitement? So I played with that a lot, on this course. It had me really reframe a lot of my thoughts and beliefs and just dig deep. And that's exactly what I do in my coaching now. It's digging deep and having a look at, what beliefs are you holding? I realised at the time I was believing that horse riding was very dangerous. And now I don't believe that. I believe it's fun. And I believe, yes, there's an aspect of danger to it, but there is to so many other things I could be doing as well. So it's just accepting that, and it's okay. I'm not in control of life in general. We have ourselves in a false sense of control, don't we? I think I'm safe sitting here at this desk. I could get up and trip over. It sounds crazy, but it's true, isn't it? There's lots of things that
Yeah.
we don't know. So it was changing a lot of my thought patterns, and the fear
Yeah.
over time. It just started to melt away. And I do things now on my horse that 4 years ago, honestly, I'd be shaking like a leaf. I was literally physically shaking while on the horse, so nervous. And now I can go around a course in a competition in front of people and actually have the clear-headed focus to be able to think and enjoy it at the same time.
Yeah, definitely. And how do you think letting go of this fear over time has helped increase your emotional stability?
Oh, I think it's just enabled me to experience things, and it's okay. I don't have to think good or bad as much. There's certain things are bad or that's good, or it's more about it just is what it is. That emotional stability just allows you to better accept certain situations and realize it's my perspective. It's how I choose to look at it. It is, again, it's empowering myself. The emotional stability has given me the time and space in my mind to respond to things rather than have a react. And I'm not saying, again,
Yeah.
this isn't about perfection. I'm not saying I'm perfect at doing this, but I am much closer to where I want to be than I was.
Yeah, I love that. Well, it sounds like a really incredible journey that you've been on as well. So hopefully through the advice you've given us and all these little tips as well that we can do it for ourselves or even just acknowledge that we need to reach out for help.
Absolutely, absolutely. And like I say, I think it's wonderful these days that so many of us are realizing that it's so good for us to work with someone else and really get to know ourselves and
Yeah.
to want to grow and improve. I used to think that once you finish your university studies, it's almost that your learning has stopped and then you go to work. And okay, you learn your job, but then you get to know it. And it's just a bit of a fixed mindset, isn't it? I love this idea
Yeah.
that we can just keep growing and learning. I can decide to go and learn another language if I want tomorrow, can't I? Any of us can. We can just
Yeah.
decide and grow and learn all the time.
Exactly. I feel like we don't have to stop doing certain things just because society sort of dictates that perhaps this is when you should stop doing something.
That's right. And that's where I can be with my horse riding sometimes. When my primitive brain gets going, it will say, are you a bit old for this show jumping? That fear thing will still come in. All these jumps are getting a bit higher now, and it should you maybe stop? And I think, well, now I don't want to. I'm enjoying it. So let's just keep going and
Yeah.
see where it goes. Let's be open minded about it rather than trying to shut me down and stop.
Yeah, for sure. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much for
Thank
sharing all of
you.
this with us. And I feel like I've learned so much about this concept of emotional stability, and this whole idea of the primitive brain is something that's really going to stick with me. And I feel like it's so relatable for so many people as well.
Oh, that's brilliant. Well, yeah, definitely. It's lovely to be able to help people. And sometimes it's just that little piece of information, isn't it, that drops as a seed and then that grows in a positive way. So,
Yeah, exactly. Well, that also brings us to the end of today. But thank you so much for coming on the show and talking to us about this topic. I really had a good time.
oh, thank you. It's lovely to meet you. And it's been lovely chatting to you as well. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Well, before you go, if any of our listeners want to find out a bit more about you, where can they go?
I guess LinkedIn is where I am mostly.
Yeah.
But I don't know if there's a link or something I can provide to you for LinkedIn, but that would be the place. If anyone wants to reach out to me, I'm always delighted to have new conversations with people, see where people are at. They want help, their own progress.
Beautiful. Well, we've also got Maria's details in the description below, and we'll include that link to LinkedIn there as well. But thanks everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. You have been listening to Work in Progress, the Personal Productivity Science Insights podcast produced by the Life Management Science Labs. Listen to episodes from LMSL's 10 Life Management Perspectives on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or other podcasting apps on your smartphone. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider rating our show, sharing it, and subscribing to our channel, as it helps other people find it and us grow to bring you more quality resources. More of our work can be found on our website pp.lmsl.net, where you can join our movement. I'm Joanna. Thanks for tuning in.